Set for a start for the 1983 Castrol 6 Hour, and a godsend from heaven as well. We have fine sunny conditions at Amaroo Park, and that's the first time for more than a week that we've seen the sun here in Sydney. Importantly though, that will mean that we're going to have a very hot, fast start to the race, and that will put extra pressure on the riders because the humidity here at the moment would be up around 90%. The forecast is for scattered showers later in the day, so the race will have everything. A hot start, a fast start, with a possibility of important tyre changes later in the race. Talking about the crowd, we've got a big crowd building up here at Amaroo Park. They're pouring in all around the circuit. The hills are becoming crowded. The pit area is like a circus at the moment. You can't move for the people running in all directions. It's a very, very exciting day, and this should be a very, very spectacular event. Talking about the team changes, one important announcement for you. Robbie Phillips will ride with the Pirelli Matic team, and the Dave Peterson rider from South Africa, who was invited out for the event, won't take part. So the teams will be, as we saw them yesterday, lining up on the grid for the start today. And talking about that, let's now go to Will Hagan, because we're very close to a start. We'll run through the teams as they're on the grid looking for the start of the 1983 Castrol 6 Hour.
This is the way the field lines up for the 14th Castrol 6-hour production race for motorcycles. 7 Honda V4 750s in the top 10, a lone Yamaha, Kawasaki and Suzuki. And for the third year in a row, Tasmanian Malcolm Campbell has set fastest time of 55.72. In fact, the only person yesterday to better last year's best qualifying time, which he had with Len Willing and Wayne Gardner. Second fastest is Rob Phillips, then Len Willing, who was equal fastest last year, and then this remarkable effort by the Yamaha 900 that won the last of the endurance races at Surfers Paradise, ridden by the young up-and-coming road race rider Richard Scott, a great time of 55.95. Graham Crosby, second in last year's World Championship, took 5th grid position, and then Pete Byers, the Queenslander, who always goes so well at Amaroo Park, taking 6th. Rob Scolyer, the Tasmanian, slotted bike 18 into 7th place, still dealing, as you can see, with lots of Hondas. Then the strife-stricken team number 1, the Mentor Motorcycles team that won the race last year with Wayne Clark and Wayne Gardner riding. Gardner off the bike, Glenn Taylor on the bike in his place and losing his job in the process. Then the lone Kawasaki in the top 10, the lone Suzuki and 2 Honda 750s bringing up 11 and 12.
The start of the Castrol 6-hour Motorcycle Classic for 1983. Riders in the Le Mans start to their bikes. Bike 2, Mel Campbell, Rod Cox. Cox at the helm leads the race from bike 8. Len Willing, the Matic team. 2 Hondas in the lead. Clean start from all the riders as they come over the hill for the first time. Perhaps 360 laps of the Castrol 6-hour to go.
The first 3 riders down to on the corner this time. And Richard Scott back there in fourth place.
One lap gone in the Castrol 6-hour, bike 2 in the lead.
From the 2 Matic team bikes, 11 and 8, Rob Phillips.
Oh, and there's one gone. A big fall, the rider's up. And now a challenge from bike 11. Rob Phillips takes over the lead in the Castrol 6-hour. And it's bike 1. We watch now the replay of that crash, and it's bike 1, the troubled Glenn Taylor Wayne Clark bike. There's Clark on the machine. And there's the wreck of the bike that Wayne Gardner was to have ridden in the Castrol 6-hour. Crashed heavily on Thursday, had to get off the bike. Glenn Taylor was put on in his place only late yesterday afternoon in a controversial decision. And now the machine is the first retirement in the Castrol 6-hour after just 1 lap. Race leader, bike 11. the expert Rob Phillips in the distinctive yellow leathers. Out in front of Rod Cox, and tucking in hard in third place is Len Willing on the second of the Mattings team bikes.
See if Wayne can ride the bike back to the pit area. Look down at on the cross.
Phillips was brought into the team as a reserve rider and had not ridden the bikes since Thursday, when yesterday afternoon he was put on fresh tyres and sent out to go very quickly and recorded the second fastest time in practice, a 55.81, now leading the race. That's the mark of a professional.
Behind that leading trio, it's Richard Scott on the Yamaha 900 4th, bike number 7. 5th is bike number 18, Robert Scollier, riding a Honda 750, and 31, Graham Crosby, 6th, followed by John Pace, 7th, in number 9, and 8th is bike number 10, Rodney Brown, the Queenslander. Style of Phillips that took him to victory in this year's Arrow 500 race at Bathurst, when he got a ride on the Team Honda Superbike that Andrew Johnson forsook for the V4 based Superbike. It was actually a Formula 1 bike that Phillips rode. He is so easy on the machinery, smooth, yet very quick.
2.2 seconds behind the first three places is the first Yamaha in the event. Richard Scott, bike 7, being hard pressed by bike 18, Robert Scollier. Scollier's bike, a VF 750 Honda, and a last-minute entry in the event. It's in fact the team's training bike, which was crashed twice in the Pirelli 3-hour at Service Paradise 3 weeks ago, but had to replace the team's race bike, which went down the road very heavily here at Amaroo Park on Friday with Bernie Summers at the helm.
Gap going up to 3.65 seconds. Scott behind third place. The Yamaha quick up the hill, gets away from the Honda. There's Graham Crosby on 31, and 9 tucked in behind him is Pete Byers, the Queenslander, the bike being ridden at the moment by John Pace. Byers was the man, though, that slotted it onto its grid position yesterday. 6th place. Best Suzuki, Roger Hayes, further back in the field. So the biggest capacity bike in the field, the most powerful, not up with the front runners at this stage.
And as we watch Richard Scott, Bob Vinson is in the pits with a very disappointed Wayne Clark from the Mentor Motorcycles team.
Well, it's been a sad old week for the Mentor Motorcycles and Triple M team, because there's been skin off 2 riders and 1 bike down in the first lap. Wayne Clark, what happened, mate?
I don't know, I just was going over the pitch of pave, just hit the front brakes and the front wheel just let go. Just slid out and I just let everyone down. I feel really bad, because the boys are from, the mechanics have put a real lot of effort into working on the bike to get it, get everything in the race and trim. And everyone's put so much money into it, like bringing Wayne out, and, just things haven't gone well for us at all.
It must be a hell of a disappointment for the team, because as you say, Wayne came all the way from England and then had that terrible fall, and now you've lost it in the first lap, but still you've got 2 previous wins on the board. You're going to be back?
I'll be back next year for sure. Yeah, no worries. But I just feel a bit dejected, because everyone's put so much effort into it. I've gone and just thrown it away.
Great. Thank you.
Second place now changes as the second of the Mattich team bikes, Len Willing, comes up onto the tail of Rob Phillips, and it's Team Mattich first and second in the Castrol 6-hour, with Rod Cox on the VF 750 Honda tagging along in third position. and seemingly falling just a little bit out of touch.
This is the battle for 4th place, Richard Scott. 5th place, Roger Hayes, now coming forward from 10th. His starting position, he was 10.8 seconds in arrears to 3rd place bike some laps ago. He is now only 10.9 seconds in arrears to the leaders. So he's pulled about 3 seconds on the lead bikes, as well as 5 placing, having a real charge. He's passed Graham Crosby. He's now after Richard Scott. It's Yamaha number 7. Yamaha 900 versus that Suzuki 1000, number 6. Scott doing a great job. He's withstood the thrust of several Hondas from him in that 4th place. And now Roger Hayes has a look down the inside, doesn't quite get there, but he is very determined. Through the corner, Winfield, that he fell on earlier in the week. Most powerful bike in the field. Over 100 horsepower. Twice previous winner of the race. Got the inside running for the loop now. 180 kilometres an hour as he sits it up, straightens it up back to 3rd gear for the loop. And he's in 4th place and now after the leading trio.
Probably the hungriest rider in the Castrol 6 Hour is Len Willing on bike 8, now rounding up the back markers already, charging through, and he is the new race leader, taking over on lap 13 from his teammate Rob Phillips, the professional. Willing right back on the bike, fighting cramps already this early in the event, but trying to avoid them. And the back markers, the heavy track that exists this early in the race, not worrying Len Willing as he slams through them.
And Hayes has pulled a second on Willing. He's now just under 10 seconds behind him.
Hayes last won here in 1978. And I guess when we talk about hungry riders, Roger Hayes also is hungry for a race win. His attitude this week has been particularly determined. But it's been matched all the way by Lenny Willing, the long, lanky, laconic Len Willing. Here comes Rob Phillips, back to the lead on lap 24. Rob Phillips passes his teammate, bike 8, Len Willing. And this is the situation that any team manager dreads when so early in a long distance race his 2 team members start dicing. Tucked in behind is bike 2, Rod Cox, waiting for any mistake from the 2 team managed Pirelli riders.
This is the position at lap 25 with the 2 Pirelli team bikes dicing among each other, and Rob Phillips back into the lead at the moment on bike 11 from Len Willing on bike 8. Rodney Cox sitting in 3rd place, just lurking and watching the dice going on in front of him. Back in 4th place, it's Roger Hayes, 12.7 seconds in arrears on that Suzuki number 6. But he's being caught by Graham Crosby, who has displaced Richard Scott on the best Yamaha back to 6th place. Scott originally running in 4th. The wheel that we just saw behind Hayes is Crosby, the man who was 2nd in last year's World Championship, coming forward now on the Honda. Crosby had been Hayes had been making ground on the leading trio, but has gone static on it and dropped a couple of seconds, in fact, and apparently that doesn't suit Crosby, who's now starting to move forward on the VF 750. He, of course, was originally to have been riding a Suzuki 1000. but only 1 week ago they finally concluded all the arrangements that were necessary to swap with another team and to get the Dunlop team onto a Honda 750 rather than a Suzuki. There was nothing wrong with the Suzuki as a motorbike in terms of power or handling or ground clearance. It was just that they didn't like the tyre wear for the particular tyres they had. Crosby, who didn't win a Grand Prix last year actually in coming second in the World Championship, but did finish in front of Freddie Spencer, the Honda team rider, who this year won the World Championship by beating Kenny Roberts, who'd previously won it 3 times. A rider of great distinction who was a bit disenchanted though and gave riding away, and we see him in only his 3rd or 4th race this year in semi-retirement. Really more interested now in flying planes than he is in racing motorbikes seriously, although he's put a lot of effort into this race.
And he's down bike 7. Richard Scott is down. He's hit bike 4. That's Neil O'Sullivan dicing for 6th position with bike 18, Robert Scolia. Richard Scott has made a mistake in the slowest corner of the track and is down. Let's see it again. Scott and Scolia had been having the most magnificent dice, and Scott just picks up the front wheel with his back wheel of bike 4 and brings himself down into Winfield Corner. Let's see it again. The magnificent dice between Scott and Scolia. Neil O'Sullivan in front of them, much slower on the track, moves out of the way and then just gets clipped by the back wheel of Richard Scott, and that's all over. Brings them both down. That's Scott in the pits. The bike doesn't look too badly damaged, but what a huge shame, because this was the leading Yamaha and the bike that was being widely tipped to break the Honda domination of the Castrol 6-hour. Work around the handlebars. In one way, very fortunately, happened on the slowest corner of the track, so the impact wouldn't have been so heavy, but the twist was not a problem. Stephen Gall standing by, ready to get on the machine. Gall 4 times Castrol Mr. Motocross champion. And the man who's been as quick as the Grand Prix ace, Richard Scott, in practice on this machine. But every second that ticks by destroys any chance that the Yamaha team might have of taking out the Castrol 6-hour for 1983. Ball gets on the bike. Scott obviously has to rest up. Happened on lap 42.
Richard Scott had been going so well on bike 7, qualifying at 4th, holding 4th early on in the race, then going back to 6th very steadily, but being assaulted by Robbie Scolia until he just made an error, lapping a bike on lap 42, came down. Stephen Gall now on the bike. It's way down tail end of the field, about position 23, and in the pits, the team manager, Peter Addison.
With me, Peter Addison, the manager of the team, and Peter, Richard's already right off the bike and inside cooling down.
That's right, Bob. He's gone in to have a bit checked over and make sure he's got no injuries at all, and we'll bring him back out on as soon as Stephen's done his, hopefully, hour and a half now.
You had a good quick look over the bike. Any problems, do you think?
No, I don't think so. The throttle was sticking initially, but we've solved that problem, and we had a quick look at it, and there's nothing wrong with it, so we're set to
Any instructions for Stephen as he went out?
No, just try and stay out there as long as possible.
And how's that upset your race plans?
Well, we wanted to try and stay out there the hour and a half, but that's gone now, so we'll just have to sit down, have a bit of think about it, and come up with a new strategy now.
So the bike's gone out with a full tank and everything checked, and it should be right for, what, another hour and a half?
Yes, it's gone out again, full tank. We should get at least an hour and a half out of it, and we'll be there at the finish. I don't think that's going to set us back that much.
On lap 50 of the Castrol 6 Hour, Rob Phillis holds the lead by 6 seconds from Rod Cox. Only 1 second then back to bike 8, Lenny Willing. And then comes Graham Crosby, the international, who is only 1 second in front of Roger Hayes on the only Suzuki in the top 6. And then Rob Scolia on the Honda in 6th position.
Graham Crosby going under Roger Hayes again. This Honda-Suzuki battle continuing as Crosby a bit unbelieving over Hayes' tactics down at Honda Corner.
And the shake of the fist.
Takes over 4th place again. He had been in 4th. He's been displaced back to 5th. Hayes had got him again, but Crosby doesn't like the way Hayes is riding. Is making that very apparent to him. And Crosby schooled in the hardest school of all, European Grand Prix riding. Now trying to lap very smartly, under brakes through the corners to try and pull a little bit of a gap on Hayes. You'll see it here if he could just round up Gary Turner on bike 25, which he does there. He just might leave Hayes behind, but Hayes is determined to dog him round the back section of the circuit. The high-speed 4th gear sweeper, 170 kilometres an hour, now down to 3rd gear for Honda. And they are 15 seconds behind 3rd placed Len Willing on Honda number 8. He's 3 seconds behind 2nd placed Rod Cox on number 2, and the leader has a margin of 6 seconds, and that of course is Rob Phillis on 11.
For 11th position in the Castrol 6 Hour, 1 lap down on the leaders, are 2 of the South African visitors. Bike 17, Glenn Williams on the Kawasaki GPZ 750, and right behind him, bike 5, the Yamaha 900, being ridden by Mario Rademeyer. Both of these riders, top production and Grand Prix machine riders in South Africa, brought out here by their respective teams and enjoying no end the sunshine of Amaru Park after several days of rain, and keeping the seats well and truly warm for their local co-riders. William sharing with Ian Perrault and Rademeyer with Richard Scoulard, the New Zealander.
This is Robbie Scolia, who was putting the pressure on Richard Scott when Scott fell in 6th place. At that stage Scolia was 7th. Now he's pressuring Roger Hayes on the Suzuki 1000. Hayes, who'd been having that earlier argument with Graham Crosby, is back in 5th place. Scolia is 6th, having picked up the position due to Scott falling. Honda 750, of which there are 13 in this event, being ridden by Scolia. Only 5 Suzuki 1000s. Tasmanian Scolia, Sydney rider, Roger Hayes, who's won the race twice previously. Scolia was well positioned there to go down the inside under brakes approaching Winfield Corner, the slowest corner on the circuit. But again, the extra power of the Suzuki out-accelerating him as they went down to the corner. Honda's not quite so good under brakes either. They get very soft, lose a lot of pressure in the front lever, so the lever comes back almost to the handlebars as the race goes on. The riders are finding that in practices, but have an enormous amount of ground clearance, can be cranked over a long, long way, as Scolia's showing there, through the loop. The V4 engine is very narrow, no wider than a twin. The exhaust pipes up out of the way. They do just scrape the foot pegs. And by gee, it was pretty cheeky, and I don't know if he'll hold it on the exit, on the rush down to Winfield, and there you see the answer. And that was cheeky, because although he got underneath Hayes, he missed his apex and went out wide, couldn't get the power on early enough. There was no real trouble for Hayes, particularly with the greater power of the Suzuki. The Honda has 90 horsepower, the Suzuki about 108, to come back at him. The argument for 5th and 6th place. Hayes 5th, Scolyer 6th. Behind them is John Pace on 9, Jeffrey Sale on 12, and on 10, Rodney Brown. Again, Scolyer looking down the inside there, but Hayes making sure he couldn't get inside him. There was no room at all. Again, the greater power of the Suzuki pulling it out those just handy few lengths that avoids any challenge under brakes. As they come round to lap Gary Coleman on the second fastest of the 3 Yamaha 900s in qualifying, and at this stage lying in 10th place.
And here's bike 8 in 3rd position. The Len Willing machine in for the first scheduled pit stop. Willing off the bike. The very efficient Team Matic into action. Willing to be replaced on the bike by the New Zealander Vince Sharp, and they're doing a wheel change. They're on 140/70 section, Pirelli tyres, and it's jamming in the rear. 25 seconds gone and they still can't get the thing done. Now they're away. Pit time 32 seconds, Vince Sharp out. But a slow and somewhat disastrous stop for the Matic team.
And coming into the pits is the race leader, Rob Phillips, on bike number 11 with a 5-second lead as he pits over Rod Cox, Mal Campbell's Honda number 2. And this means at lap 82 that the Hondas will probably need 4 stops, where they were hoping for only 3.
Well, with me at the moment, Len Willing, who's just gotten off the other co-team bike. Len, is it very hot out there?
Yeah, it's a little bit hot. The track's in real good condition. It's a funny race. There's not much traffic like there is normally. We had a bit of a slow leak in a rear tyre. We just checked it and it only had 35 pound. It's supposed to have 44, but somehow it's leaked out a little.
And what's happened here? You've got a stall?
Yeah.
Well, you can hear the frustration of Len in the background. They're still having problems getting this bike started. This was the race bike, the race lead bike. Robbie Phillips is just off. Jeff French is on the bike, and they've had a problem with the stall.
They're away.
They're away,
Yeah.
Right. Frustration, Lenny, I know, but how's that going as far as team tactics are concerned? You happy with everything?
Yeah, pretty happy. It's no point. Robbie came past me and then he made a mistake and he gave me the lead, and then I made one and he got it back, so I couldn't go. It's a long race, you know. There's still a lot to go.
And with that slight stall there, the bike getting back out on the track, are things close enough really to still be in the lead?
For him?
Oh, for the team, as far as tactics are concerned.
Yeah, I think it'll be very close between Malcolm, the Honda team, and our team at the moment. I think Rob's team would have dropped back to 3rd after that lengthy pit stop, but there's still a lot of race balls, you know. I'm not sure. It's hard to pick anything.
There's the new race leader, bike number 2, the Rod Cox Mal Campbell bike. Rod Cox in the saddle at the moment, and the fastest pairing out in the field, because Campbell was fastest qualifier and Cox was only just pipped by Rob Phillips from being 2nd fastest. So the fastest man in the field, still yet to get on the bike, that's leading the race, and has only about another 10 minutes to go to get to the 3 pit stop mark for a Honda 750, as Graham Crosby in second place comes into the pits. Through those pit stops, he'd come up to second place. The crazy thing in that pit stop where the engine wouldn't start for Jeff French is that the bikes have got a kill switch on the right-hand side handlebar, and sometimes that can be inadvertently knocked, and it might have been something as simple as that stopped the bike from starting. Michael Cole onto the bike in place of Crosby, and very keen to get away, and a stop in 18 seconds. Good stop. So Roger Hayes is now second on Suzuki, number 6. Third place is Robert Scollier on the Honda 750, number 18, that you saw nearly brought down when Richard Scott crashed earlier on. Number 9 is fourth, John Pace Pete Byers, another Honda. Number 12 is fifth, Jeffrey Sales, Honda 750, and 31 has fallen to 6th place. That's Crosby and Cole.
Crosby Cole bike is on a hard compound Dunlop 140/80 rear tyre. The team is hopeful of getting through the entire race without a tyre change. That's why they managed that flying 18-second pit stop. In the pits is Graham Crosby.
Well, with us at the moment, Graham Crosby and team manager Dennis Neal. After a fairly steady start by the champion rider, Crosby has lifted the bike into second place. Graham, are you happy with that performance so far?
Where are we, second?
You're running second. Fairly steady
Hang on a minute. You've got to keep a good look on the board. We've just gone back. We're running second at the pit stop, so by the time we actually change, I would imagine we'd probably drop back a bit. But at this stage, yeah, I'm very happy to...
It was a fairly steady start, and you've worked your way back up through the field. Has that been the tactic?
Yeah, us geriatrics. We can't go too fast too soon. I need 4 hours on a hard machine.
Okay, you're going to have 3 stints on the bike with a 40-minute finish, apparently. Is that right?
See, I know. I better go have a talk to my team manager.
Talking about the team manager, Dennis Neal, one of the interesting points about the race is that the Dunlop have decided to run one tyre for the whole race. Right, Dennis?
Yeah, Bob, we figured the tyre will definitely do the distance tread-wise. We've just got to decide in the last hour of the race by his times as to how much it's gone off. And if we think that we need to go any faster, we'll bring him in and put a soft qualifying type of tyre on, which you can do 55s on.
And Roger Hayes on the leading Suzuki, second place in the event, just overtaken by bike 18 into second place, in fact. Heads for his first pit stop on lap 90. Hayes very slowly into the pits, obeying all the rules and going for the rear tyre change, using the soft compound Dunlop K300 rear tyre, which at maximum can do 1.5 hours of racing, and that's exactly what it's done. Hayes off the bike, the New Zealander Bob Holden, winner of the Yamaha 750, or rather of the 750 class here last year, onto the machine. 27 seconds gone. And away in 31 seconds, Robert Holden back into the Castrol 6 Hour. Up into second place is this bike, Robert Scollier, riding with Bernie Summers on the VF 750, yet to take their pit stop. If you think the Castrol 6 Hour has got bounced, tune in to ABC Sport all this week at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we bring you more spectacular sporting action, gymnastics, every night this week, 6 p.m. on ABC.
situation with the number 2 bike that Rod Cox rode to the lead in the first hour and a half of the race, still in the lead after a 12-second pit stop over Rob Scolyer. He's in second place, hasn't yet pitted, the Tasmanian, on bike number 18. And that is the dice for the lead at this stage, but bike 18 due for a pit stop very shortly. One of the longest running of all the Hondas, and just past the mark that would take him to 3 pit stops, an hour and a half, as we look at bike number 12, which is lying in 4th place at the moment behind the Suzuki of Roger Hayes, Robert Holden, that after its pit stop has retained 3rd. Jeffrey Sale, the Australian international, into the saddle now. After Terry Paviel did the early riding on it for him. And Campbell now settling into the groove, but still not getting away from Scolyer. And the fall, and it looks to me like Campbell Ferris. The 31-year-old rider who, on bike number 10, it is Campbell Ferris, the Rod Brown bike that was lying 10th. Ferris was brought in as a reserve to back up Rodney Brown. That team got mixed around in the bike changes that occurred. It was originally to be Glenn Taylor and Rod Cox. Finally, Campbell Ferris was brought into the bike. He's a 250 class rider. And as the boxer on the mat says, I'm only feigning injury, everything's under control. The referee got to 8, and the rider reckoned there was no point counting any further, as the Bernie Summers Rob Scolyer bike is now in second place, giving Mal Campbell a nice buffer from first place back to Roger Hayes, the Suzuki that's now being ridden by Robert Holden, which will be second. Third is Jeffrey Sale on 12. Fourth is the Crosby bike, number 31, presently being ridden by Mick Cole. Fifth is bike number 8, the Lynn Willing bike being ridden by Vince Sharp. And sixth is 11, the Jeff French, Rob Phillis Honda. Campbell Ferris deciding that he did need a rest and lying back down again. We've got one of the more elegant views of him. Obviously a bit winded and knocked about, but not hurt in terms of bones or limbs. But it can knock a fair deal of puff out of you when you come to a fairly thudding jump on the ground, and particularly if you run into some of the barriers. Underneath on bike 11 goes Jeff French, the co-rider, on Mick Cole on 31. Both of those bikes have led the race. 11, of course, the one that Rob Phillis had a nice lead on when it stopped and then wouldn't restart and took 55 seconds in the pit stop. At the moment, Cole had a very quick pit stop and is shown as being in second place. So that means he's gone back to third as bike 11 has gone through on him. He's trying for a number of laps to do so and has finally pulled it off. Queenslander Jeff French, son of John French, the car racing driver, who was third in the Surfers Paradise 3-hour recently, the best placed Honda.
Lap 108 and Team Honda's lead production rider Malcolm Wally Campbell in the lead by 24 seconds from the Michael Cole Graham Crosby VF 750, and in the pits is Campbell's co-rider Rod Cox.
100 laps down, and the fastest rider yesterday, out in the lead again, Malcolm Campbell, and the man who's put him there is co-driver, rider Rod Cox. Rod, you must be very pleased the way things are going.
Yeah, everything's going real well. Playing.
You said to me a moment ago you're very glad that when the change came, Malcolm went out on the bike.
Yeah, it's good to know that he was getting on it because he can operate pretty well. But we're pleased to be where we were. I think we ended up a lap in front with the fuel stops and that, but I'm not sure where we are now. But I think if the tyre hangs in like it's wearing pretty well, we might get through on one change.
And you must be pleased to see this dry weather.
Oh yeah, after practicing all week in the rain, it's good. Got qualifying in the dry yesterday, but that was about it.
And now, as far as the rest of the race is concerned, what can we expect from Team Honda?
Oh, we just got to keep circulating now, I think, and hope nothing goes wrong. And I don't think it'll rain. Hope not.
Great. Thank you.
This is the dice for third with Vince Sharp on number 8 trying to hold out Michael Cole on bike 31. He's in fourth place, but as you can see, wants third out of Honda corner. They run them through there in third gear, dropping fairly low in the revs. Honda's very high revving. Got the ignition cut out at about 11,500 revs. But very strong also in the mid-range. They will pull quite strongly, not really in race terms, but from about 5,000 revs as Cole comes round the outside of the Kiwi, rounds him up, goes into third place. Vince Sharp back to fourth. Mick Cole fairly rockets away from him. By gee, pulled a lot of ground there in the run over the top of the hill. A very difficult high-speed sectional circuit it is there too, particularly as they run out there. The track really does close down on you, and it looks as though they're just letting them run to the outside of the track to the ripple strips, but in fact, one misjudgment, they'd run right off the track. They're working very hard indeed. Heavy braking for Honda corner. Big hard squirt down, and then heavy braking and second gear for Winfield. Sharp coming back at him, coming up to lap Kawasaki of Malcolm Best, John Layden, one of, in fact, the only 1,000cc Kawasaki in the event. Layden and Best fairly keen to hold out Cole. That's let Sharp get back at him after Cole got a good run up the hill again. And again, the 1,000cc Kawasaki with a lot of squirt. Much more so than the 750 Honda, but doesn't handle so well. Argument happening on lap 124 as Sharp goes down inside Cole, who goes down inside Layden, and it's very crowded there indeed as they punch out in second gear. Come up immediately to Jeffrey Sale now on Paviel's bike number 12, and just in front of them is Bernie Summers on the bike that Rob Scolyer briefly had in the lead, number 18. And the Kawasaki vanquished. So too temporarily is Cole.
With 125 laps down in the 1983 Castrol 6 Hour, pole position rider Malcolm Campbell on the bike at the moment, leading the field with co-rider Ron Cox in the pits and cooling down after having ridden the first session. In second place, bike 11, the Jeff French Rob Phillips team. Phillips setting a lightning pace in the first session. After stalling the bike, Jeff French in the pits as they went out for his first session, they've run into second place. And in third place at the moment, bike 8, Vince Sharp, Len Willing with Vince Sharp on the bike, the man who holds the official lap record here at Amaroo Park. So in fourth place at the moment, the international rider Graham Crosby setting the pace in the first session On the bike at the moment, Michael Cole, and they're moving up through the field after a fairly steady start. They're looking good with no tyre changes apparently from Dennis Neal, although there could be a late change late in the race. In 5th position, bike number 6, the Suzuki 1000 of Holden and Hayes. I just spoke to Hayes and they're talking about changing a tyre at every change in the pits, so there's going to be plenty of pressure on that team. And on 18, in 6th position, the Honda 750 of Summers and Scollier.
Great dice going on here, still between Michael Cole on 31 and Vince Sharp on 8, and Cole has again got through on the Matic Pirelli team bike, the Apple Computers Dunlop entry. Sitting up now from that fast section of circuit, braking hard for Honda corner that was so daunting when there was a wall there. The actual profile of the corner hasn't changed, the wall's been removed, and so the riders now have a view of the corner where they once didn't. And into the picture there too is the relief rider on the leading Suzuki 1000, Robert Holden, the Kiwi, who won the 750 class here, as a very good wet weather rider too. Coming into the pits, the motocross ace Stephen Gall on bike number 7, handing back to Richard Scott, the man who made just that one fraction of a second error in the opening session after doing so well on the Yamaha 900. That really was the hope of the Yamaha team to put pressure on the Hondas. Petrol spilling all over people, in their eyes and faces. Dear oh me, things when they start to go bad really do sometimes go dreadfully wrong. But the right, Richard Scott, slow pit stop as you can see, so that with Gall off the bike, Scott will get on, but there are problems, and John Smales can probably tell us more about them from the pit area.
Stephen Gall, what happened?
Good question. I think they've had a little bit of a problem with the refueler. Probably the cap's not turned off really quickly. Sprayed up in a lot of the mechanics' faces. It's not very nice to have petrol in your face.
It also went into Richard Scott's face. Did you see that?
Yeah, it did, but he said he was okay as he took off, so I'm sure Richard will be all right. He wouldn't have went out there if he had a problem.
There's a lot of vapour around here at the moment. Could it have got underneath his visor?
Oh, no, he had his visor up, actually, when it splashed, so I had a look at his visor. It's pretty clear, so I don't think there'll be a worry.
And there we see a change for the race lead and a dice back by Malcolm Campbell. This is an incredible dice. It's been going on for 3 or 4 laps with Campbell on the outside, French on the inside, and French takes him as they go into stop corner. Around and out, and Campbell will come back at him. Malcolm Campbell, the fastest qualifier yesterday. Jeff French, who got on the bike after Robbie Phillips, and he's really fought back and caught Campbell in a wonderful dice.
Is Campbell planning to go down inside French into Winfield corner, and then French's line put him off, and you saw Campbell have to sit it up and have another crack at the apex of the corner. So French going very well indeed, although the bike got pretty slidey there in the loop. Sweeps out now to the ripple strips on the exit, picks up 4th gear and punches it hard through this back section of circuit, bettering 170 kilometres an hour.
And they've been taunting each other for the last few laps, Will.
Honda corner, 3rd gear. Hold 3rd gear all the way down to Winfield corner. Buzz it up to 11,500 on the ignition cutout. Both of these 750 V4 Hondas. And then out of there in 2nd gear. New race leader, Queenslander Jeffrey French there on bike number 11. for the Matic Pirelli team from Malcolm Campbell, fastest qualifier for the last 3 years, riding on bike number 2.
After 150 laps in the 1983 Castrol, there at retirement, the Clark-Taylor bike that was thrown away in the first lap by Clark, Byers and Pace, one of the fancies team for the race, throwing an engine on lap 80, and Brown and Ferris losing it on lap 93.
And the Dyson still for the lead. It has been going on a long, long time. Jeffrey French on 11. And looming onto him there on bike number 2, Malcolm Campbell. Really does want him. The interesting part of this is that bike 11 got a new tyre at its pit stop. Bike 2 didn't, but I reckon it'll want one at the next stop. And they're not very far out from the next range of stops either. 152 laps completed so far, so not quite half race distance yet. Campbell, I suspect, a little bit frustrated that he can't peg back Jeff French, or can't get past him and hold him out. Here in first and second place behind them is the Suzuki 1000 of Robert Holden, Roger Hayes. He's third. Graham Crosby. Mick Cole, fourth on 31, the Honda 750. Fifth is bike 8, Vince Sharp, Len Willing. And sixth is bike 12, Jeffrey Sale, Terry Paviel. Stephen Gall, incidentally, on the Yamaha 900 now with Richard Scott in the saddle, has pulled itself back up to 10th place after dropping to 23rd when it crashed when in position 6 and had to make a pit stop to repair some damage. And into the pits and for another tyre change, bike number 8. It was one of the ones dicing for the lead early on, but let's go down now to John Smales.
And in the pits in 5th position is the Vince Sharp, Len Willing bike. Len getting on the bike. Chris Matic at the back of the machine, having difficulty getting the V70 series tyre into the frame. He got the first one out in only 5 seconds, but it's taken 24 seconds to get the other tyre back in, and the bike's away in only 27 seconds. A fantastic pit stop. Well done.
Look at this.
Campbell rounding up. And look at French. The left hand on his knee, saying, come on, can't you do better than that?
Well, he did do better. In fact,
dear.
He took him, didn't he?
But real provocation from Jeffrey French. Sitting up and one hand off the handlebars. And French prepared to be a little bit relaxed because he's heading for a pit stop in perhaps a couple of minutes' time. Perhaps another 2 laps for Jeffrey French, holding down second place, arguing with Malcolm Campbell. A lot of motorsport drivers and riders are not particularly athletic, but Malcolm Campbell is. He's a really wiry, muscly, well-built sort of a guy, very fit, plays a lot of squash and other sports. And along with Roger Hayes, I think would be 2 of the most fit motorcycle riders or car racing drivers that we have in the country. Was to have been paired with Andrew Johnson former Bathurst Grand Prix winner and Australian champion. But Johnson couldn't get a medical clearance from a work injury to allow him to ride with Campbell, so he picked up Rod Cox, and Cox has slotted beautifully into the team. Big crowd basking in a beautiful summer's day in Sydney today after more than a week of some very heavy rain and some rather bleak temperatures. This pair 13 seconds in front of third-placed Suzuki number 6 of Robert Holden, Roger Hayes.
And that could make things very exciting with the possibility of pit stops coming up very soon for both these riders. In fourth place at the moment, 7 seconds behind the third place bike, is the Crosby Cole team on bike 31. But all the interest here at the moment is Campbell and French play cat and mouse with each other, perhaps anticipating what's going to happen as far as pit stops are concerned.
Rob Phillips waiting for Jeff French to bring the bike in. How are you feeling?
Very nervous.
There is some suggestion, Robbie, amongst the other teams that you may be further back than you're being given by the official lap scorers at the moment.
I don't think so.
You did stop for 55 seconds the first time around.
Yeah, but we've also been going really fast out there.
He's going superbly.
Yeah, much faster than anybody else.
Rob, what's your task as the bike comes in?
Throw the wheel to Chris as gently as possible. Okay.
There's the man that Rob Phillips was waiting for. You can see him now standing upright. And onto the stand, up in the air. Power spanners already working. The Honda fairly easy to change tyres on.
10 seconds into the stop already. The chain is back on the wheel. This is going to be an incredibly quick one. 15 seconds gone. This is a record. Coming up to 20 if the bike starts, we're away. 22. It won't start again the second time. The second time for this machine. It's stopped. Robbie Phillips is working the throttle very gently, trying not to flood it. 30 seconds gone. There's life. And 32 seconds. It was going to be the best pit stop of the race until the bike for the second time in 2 stops flooded itself.
That's incredible, because that bike has been making up ground and attacking for the whole race with 2 superb riders on it, French and Phillips. Phillips going out for the first time and now on the bike for the second time, and to have that happen to him in the pits is almost diabolical. They've lost something like, I would suggest, about 30 to 40 seconds through stalling in the pits in both stops so far. Slotted in there at the moment behind bike number 12, which is the Jeff Sale Terry Paviel bike. Jeff Sale on the bike, I think, at the moment. Past Sale.
Bike 31 into the pits now. Michael Cole off the bike and looking weary. Graham Crosby onto it. Dennis Neal at the back of the bike examining the tyre wear. Warren Willing filling the bike. Only 12 seconds gone. 13 and a half seconds and the bike's away. Michael Cole, how's it feeling?
Oh, bad. Really good.
Any problems with the rear tyre so far?
No, it's a little bit slippery, the track, but I guess that's the midday sun. The tyres are a big tyre and a pretty hard compound, so as long as we can maintain consistent, probably not breakneck speed, but consistently competitive times, we'll be up there at the end, I reckon.
Crosby has those aerated leathers on, which are beaut for this sort of weather. How are you feeling?
Oh, I feel good, I do a lot of training and stuff, so feel $1 million.
The Hondas did appear to have, people were saying that they had all sorts of engine problems and would start having them from this time onwards.
Well, I'm not normally a Honda rider. I normally ride Suzuki's, and this is the first time I've ridden a Honda for quite a few years, and I don't know how reliable they are. I know the Suzuki's are number one when it comes to reliability, but I don't know how the Hondas are.
This man doesn't normally ride Hondas either, Graham Crosby. But and 10 days ago wasn't destined to ride one in this race. Dennis Neal, team manager, and selected Suzuki 1000 as being the bike to ride, but then they changed. Crosby said, "I just do what I'm told." And they have a bit of a job in front of them, quite frankly, to catch bike 2 with Malcolm Campbell, Rod Cox, which has been running so well and is a few seconds in front, but if anybody can peel that margin back, it'll be this one. Graham Crosby on 31 now and still in 3rd place.
Lap 174 and bike 6. The Bob Holden. Roger Hayes' bike comes into the pits, and it's well short of the 3 hours that it needed to get through with only one more pit stop. So they're going to have to take 4 pit stops, and that's a major disaster for them. Roger Hayes was very happy, or was very keen to see whether the bike would do another 12 minutes on the track and get it to the 3 hour mark, but it's not to be. Now the tyre goes in, and it's a slow tyre change with the Suzuki. The exhaust pipe gets in the way. You have to drop the springs off, which is difficult. That's more bolts that have to be undone. Hayes already on the bike waiting to go, but 35 seconds so far gone. And the bike almost falls off its stand and runs right over it, and it's a 42-second stop, and that's not the sort of stop that wins Castrol 6 hours.
And the question there was, were they really finished with that pit stop? Because they looked to be still flustering around for bolts and hammering them in when Hayes took off on that bike.
It's interesting how when you get into a race situation, the best laid and rehearsed plans all go wrong. They were rehearsing yesterday. They had a best stop of 17 seconds late last night, and they reckon they could easily do it in around 22. A brilliantly conceived system of 2 dummy axles to keep spacers in position, and one punches the other out of the way, and then that is punched out of the way again when the axle goes back in. It's a very complex stop, but one which had really been thought through with some special tools and so on. And as I say, it gets into a race situation, and suddenly the time is doubled over what they did many times yesterday.
Yes, well, that seemed to be the real consensus of opinion when we were walking down through the pits late yesterday afternoon with all top teams practicing their rider and tyre changes, and they all commented the same way. Things would be a little bit different under race conditions, and we've seen that today.
Ron Bolden into the pits on bike 3, the Yamaha 900. Gary Coleman gets back on the machine. No suggestion of a rear tyre change on this machine. So it'll be a quick stop. 12 seconds so far gone. They can't find out how to start it. Gary Coleman being given instructions on where the start button is, and he's away in 18 seconds. Ron Bolden, how's the bike feeling?
Mate, the bike's performing very well. We're relying on brakes. We're not going to change a tyre. We're going to run through in the same tyre. So it's a little bit slippery, but the bike's performing really well. We're riding okay, and we just keep consistent and be there at the end.
Well, the Hondas are looking bulletproof all of a sudden. They weren't supposed to be doing that at this time.
There's still 3 hours to go, so we've got a lot of time left.
As Malcolm Campbell, the race leader, heads towards the halfway mark in the Castrol, 185 laps down. Bike number 2. Campbell and Cox on the 750, followed by bike number 11, Phyllis and French, another Honda, and another Honda in 3rd place, Crosby and Cole. 4th position, the Suzuki of Holden and Hayes, with Sharp and Willing just behind them on bike number 8, and on number 12, Sale and Paviel, with number 2, the race leader, Malcolm Campbell, coming into the pits.
Three hours and 40 seconds into the Castrol 6 hour, and Malcolm Campbell comes into the pits to hand over to Rod Cox. There'll be a tyre change. They're going to the 80 series Pirelli, which is the taller rear tyre, and one which could give the team engine problems later in the event because it demands that the bike rev harder. 22 seconds gone. Malcolm Campbell helping Rod Cox with the accelerator and also holding the fuel cap down, and it's a quick stop at 29 seconds. And Malcolm, what's gone wrong?
Oh, nothing's gone wrong, John.
You called out to him and he took
The
off.
cap didn't quite shut down properly, but he caught the message.
And he closed the cap himself as he took
he
off.
closed as he went up the hill then.
How's the bike feeling to you?
Really good. We tried to go through 2 sessions on the one tyre, which probably wasn't good lap times, but it's got us through with 3 fuel stops, where the other guys have got to make the extra stop. We'll have 2 new tyres on for the last 2 sessions, so I'm still fairly confident at the moment.
Rod Cox taking no time at all to slip into the saddle and gather his forces as he takes off again for the second half of this 6-hour endurance production bike race.
And Jeffrey Sale still in the saddle on bike number 12. Terry Paviel did the leading stint on that, the man who didn't start bike racing till he was 26 years of age. And now it's Jeffrey, who 10 years ago won the 250 class here with his older brother Murray, who had quite a deal of overseas experience, including running at Daytona. Jeffrey himself has been running 250cc World Championship events in past years, and has just about run out of money, and had a wretched season. It was only weeks after he got back to Australia as he slots up. There he's got running around the outside of him.
That's the race leader.
Phyllis, the current race leader. And near him too was number 26, the Astley Moore Honda 750. But Sale, only weeks after arriving back in Australia, phoned his previous sponsor over in England, asking him how things were going at the bike, and discovered that they'd altered the rear suspension and the thing was now suddenly ultra competitive. And poor Jeffrey had been trying to qualify it all year and had failed to do so, and it wasn't him, it was the bike badly set up. They're presently running in 6th place outright in a race at the moment being dominated by the distinctive colouring of the Honda VF 750 V4. They only sold in that colour, although a number of the teams have done their own bits of artwork around them.
And for ABC sporting fans, don't forget this week, New South Wales Panasonic Open with highlights on Thursday and Friday night from about 11 o'clock and 11:25 on Friday. And on Saturday, our live coverage commencing at 1 o'clock for both Saturday and Sunday for the final 2 rounds. That's on Saturday and Sunday live with guest commentator Bobby Simpson, along with our normal golfing commentary team of Graham Dawson, Brian Crafter and Graham Marsh.
There are more Hondas in the Castrol 6-hour field than the rest of the makes put together. Amongst the rest of the makes are 2 Ducati 600 Pandas, brilliant little V-twin 4-strokes, developing only 58 horsepower at 8,500 RPM. This one, bike 19, is being ridden by Gary Gleason and Peter Mackay. It's currently lying in 17th position. It is the lightest bike in the race and probably one of the most delightful to ride. It weighs only 188 kilograms. Compare that to 218 kilograms for the Hondas and for the Yamahas. But it also develops the least power and has the worst power to weight ratio of 308.51 horsepower per ton. Compare that to the Suzuki, which develops 469 horsepower per ton. Nonetheless, for an enthusiast who's out for a Sunday ride in the Castrol 6-hour, it's a delightful bike to ride, and I'm sure that both Gleason and Mackay are enjoying their ride no end, although I might say that both of them are expert riders, and in terms of outright potential, they both deserve something better.
with 215 laps down. Here's the man making the move on the Honda 750 from Team Honda Australia, Rod Cox, co-driver. Malcolm Campbell having one stint on the bike. Cox out for his second. He's in hot pursuit of the third place. At the moment, lying fourth, only 8 seconds behind bike number 8, Len Willing, and 2 seconds ahead of the fifth place bike of Graham Crosby. And here are the retirements so far. Clark and Taylor losing their bike on the first lap. The Byers Pace Honda going down on lap 80 with the problems with the engine. Brown and Ferris dropping their bike down about lap 93. The Suzuki 1000 of Blanco and Newman had engine failure. Then Perro and Williams had more problems with their engines and finally went out at about 2:05, with Sale and Paviel only a few laps ago crashing. But Rod Cox now putting a break between himself and the fifth place Graham Crosby in hot pursuit of third place Len Willing.
The top 5 machines, led here by bike 11, Rob Phillis, are on the same lap. In 6th position is Richard Scott, right there, bike 7. He's 3 laps down on Phillis, but what a fantastic charge he's had through the field. Remember, it was he who fell at Winfield Corner right here early in the event, dropped to last position in the motorcycle race, then on his second pit stop was showered with petrol in the pits when the fueling system went awry, and in fact had to get off the machine and lose almost a minute in the pits as he cleaned himself up before he could go riding again. Now he's locked himself to the tail of Rob Phillis, both bikes lapping in 57s, 57.5s, which is about the race pace. But Scott with the impossible task in front of him to catch back 3 laps on the bikes that are in front of him, 4 Hondas and 1 Suzuki.
Into the pits, bike number 7. And on the bike at the moment is Richard Scott.
And Richard Scott in with the bike that's crawled its way back to 6th position outright. The rear wheel change, they've done a best in practices of 30 seconds. They have to undo the disc brake caliper, which they're actually loosening the axles out now. Caliper off, rear wheel off the hub because it's a drive shaft bike. Step out of the way of that. On with the new wheel. Now to find the axle, which the caliper back into positions on the disc now. A spacer, the axle, the keeper that kept the spacers in is back in. The nut's done up on the other side of the axle. The caliper's going back on. 37 seconds. 40 seconds. Their best in practices was 30. Stephen Gall up onto the bike. Delighted with the way that Richard Scott has ridden it. The exhaust's hot, the disc brake's hot, the caliper's done up now with rattle guns. And they even have to do the number back onto the bike, and it's down, and it's 59.6 seconds, so it's a pretty long stop. And the crew are cursing. And of course they've fallen off the leaderboard from 6th position. The riding has been tremendous, other than that little error from Richard Scott. But back out on the circuit now, and circulating at very quick times, just as fast as the leaders.
And that exemplifies what we were all talking about earlier. Under race conditions, the difficulties in that pit lane can make or break the teams on race day. Already we've seen this particular team have enormous difficulties, but they're still out there making their charge, and with Richard Scott and Stephen Gall on the machine, we can be sure that things are far from over yet, with only 227 laps down.
And in third place in the Castrol 6 Hour, some 25 seconds behind the leader, Rob Phillis, is Bike 8 into the pits. Vince Sharp onto the machine, Len Willing off. This is the third scheduled pit stop for the Team Matic team. And the second tyre they're taking, Will Hagen's in the pits.
The axle is done up and the bike fired in 23 seconds and it's out again. Vince Sharp on the bike now. Len Willing off the bike, and a pretty smart pit stop which included a rear wheel change. And there's rattle gun air hoses and the stand for the tyre change being dragged all over the place, but order gradually being restored as bike 18 also comes into the pits. But let's have a talk with Len Willing. Len Willing, what's the track conditions like at the moment? Is there much sort of rubber building up on the line?
Oh, very much so. Well, everywhere. There's big black mark.
We'll give you time to get your helmet off and cool down a bit. Yes, what's the track conditions like?
Oh, it's good. There's not much oil, but there's quite a lot of rubber laying around. There is one patch of oil up in the loop that the flag marshals haven't spotted. It's right on the inside. It's a little bit offline, but it gets in the way when you're trying to get past people.
Is there much of a problem lapping slower riders?
Well, to be honest, Will, there's not many slow ones out there. They're all going. But it is a problem, yeah. I suppose you just got to push through where you can. But to be honest, the pace is pretty hot among everybody.
Well, how do you see the race at this stage? Because it's still pretty open, isn't it?
Oh, very open with all the shuffling going on in the pits. I really don't know where we're running or what's going on.
The leaderboard said you were third when you came in then.
Oh, yeah, right.
With only bike 11 and bike 6, the Suzuki of Roger Hayes in front of you, now dropped to fifth.
I just passed Roger, but then he passed me back and then I pitted, so he's still going.
We noticed earlier it's pretty hard for the 750 Hondas to get past the 1000 Suzuki because of their great acceleration.
Very hard, yeah. They've certainly got heaps of horsepower. But the Honda's good when it comes to the corners and that sort of thing, so it all sort of evens out in a lap, really.
And there we see the race leader, Robbie Phillis, coming into the pit. Jeff French, the co-rider, to jump on the bike. Phillis at the moment holding a narrow 16-second lead over the second place, Roger Hayes. As French jumps on the bike, let's hand down to Will Hagen again.
Stationary, and the wheel is out, the chain off, being held to the left by one crewman looking up that alone. The chain's on the sprocket now. Now it's positioned, the brake, clamp it down onto the disc, the caliper. That's done. Now to get the axle in, coming in from the left side. Stark, don't use force, get a big hammer. Belt it in, and it's coming through nicely. Rattle gun onto it. Fueling finished at the front of the bike. Nuts done up and down, and it started and away, and it took 37.25 seconds, and it's Jeff French on the bike. The bike immediately behind them when they pitted was bike number 6, Roger Hayes, Robert Holden, but they're out on the track again.
With French on the bike now, the first of the Matic teams have pitted. When will bike number 8 come in? They're currently running bike number 8 has been in, we've just been told, so they're running number 5th at the moment, and the news is that bike number 6, Roger Hayes, is coming into the pits very shortly. Hayes, who has fought his way up into second place, would have been in the race lead with that pit stop by Robbie Phillis. So Roger Hayes and bike number 6 heading towards a pit stop which could drop him back down in the field.
Bike 32 now comes to the pits again, still smoking badly. That's Graham Geddes on the machine at the moment. Paul Feeney to mount it. Brave comeback from Geddes after 18 months out of the sport, and he's right in the groove now and enjoying himself no end. And here comes bike 6 we see in the background, so we'll leave Geddes and go with 6. This is Roger Hayes, who'd momentarily taken over the lead in the Castrol 6 Hours. The Matic team took their pit stops, and the bike screams to a halt. Hayes off the bike and Will Hagen's in the pits.
Fury in the pits on this Suzuki because an enormous amount of work has to be done, and they really haven't got it right over the brilliant times they were doing in practicing. Now they're locating the axle, and it's coming through, knocks out the dummy. Now go for the top shock absorber mounts, and it's 22 seconds as we nearly moan down in the pits. Locate the top right-hand shock absorber mount. It's 30 seconds, and it's 32, and wheel spin, and nearly catching the engine, nearly stalling it, but not quite. Robert Holden's away. In second, in fact, in the lead when they came into the pits. And Bike 2 into the lead. Pretty hot and sweaty. Hard work out there?
Yeah, very hot.
You had some real moments when you first got onto that bike after the pit stop. We were worried that the change mightn't have been properly done and something might have been wrong with the rear of the bike.
The second stint? My stint. Yeah. Oh, no, everything was right. It just takes a while to get the tyre heated up, and the main problem I was having because I was lapping very fast, and until the last, say, 10 laps when the tyre went off again.
Do you buff the tyre at all before you put it in the bike?
No, it was brand new, so it takes probably 2-3 laps before you get enough confidence to have a go.
And Roger, the race is still very open. Can you see a winner out there at the moment?
I could go either way, actually. There's about 3 of us that I'll probably end up the winner.
Who do you see?
Well, there's a little bit of disagreement. We think we're in front of number 11, actually. The one that we're giving with the pit boards. So, I don't know.
What about Crosby coming from behind late in the race when he's got a nice new qualifying tyre on the bike?
I don't know. Well, I just did the same to him. I put 3/4 a lap on him then, so I don't know how we've dropped back so far, actually. Must be because the others haven't done the fuel stop yet. I think we're either second or first at the moment.
And as Robert Holden continues on the Roger Hayes bike, the question now remains as to whether they can get through the race without a final tyre change. They'd gone to a harder compound tyre, a Dunlop tyre, on their last change, and it now depends on their investigation of the tyre they've just taken off the machine as to whether they can get through to the end of the race on this tyre they now have on. If they can pick up some 20 seconds or so in a pit stop, and that could be all important in such a close-fought race.
Right behind Robert Holden is bike number 2. That's the race leader with Rod Cox on board. And joining us in the commentary position, the man who won the Castrol 6 Hour last year for the second time and who's had a very disappointing return to Australia from England, where he's been performing remarkably well, Wayne Gardner. Hi, Bob. Welcome, Wayne, to our commentary position. It's been a disappointing race for you and your team, I know, but looking at the position now with 238 laps gone in the race, how do you see the chances of the leading teams?
Really, I don't really like to say what's going to happen. Anything can happen to any rider, really. 6 hours is a long time. Really, I'd say Bike 2 could win. Really the first 3 or 4 riders could win. So really it's down to tyres and Graham. I see Graham on the screen here now. He's going really well.
What's the chance of Crosby coming from behind?
Well, like I said, anything can happen. 6 hours, and really it's up to him. And also Mick Cole. They've done well so far, and they've done quick stops here, and I think they should do real well.
And the significant thing is that on the third pit stop for the Crosby team, they've changed their rear tyre. They were hopeful they were going to get through the entire race on that hard compound Dunlop. But you saw in the last stint that Crosby was falling right back off Rod Cox in racing conditions, and he just couldn't keep up with him. Cox had just gone to a new Pirelli. So
I see.
Crosby obviously was in trouble with his rear tail, Wayne.
Well, this
Yeah.
could that work in favour of them, Wayne, having that change perhaps a little bit earlier than they anticipated? Will that give them a chance to make their break at them a little bit earlier?
Yeah, they should be able to go faster now. And hopefully their tyre will make it the rest of the race. That's what I think they're planning on doing. Really, it's up to the two riders, really. You know, they should be able to go fast enough for the whole race, but it's whether they can keep the whole pace up.
Well, there you see Mick Cole still settling into the saddle, and Cox and Holden going through the inside of him.
And indeed as well, Roger Hayes just rounds him up to relegate Mick Cole to 5th position on the road.
Well, we'll come back to Wayne Gardner shortly, because down in the pits we've got Graham Crosby. He's speaking with Will Hagan.
A roar of applause went up in the pits when that tyre change, refuel and rider change was done on bike 31. It went back out in 4th place. It did the lot in 18.1 seconds. Graham Crosby, that's worth a lot of hard work on the track if you can pick up that time in the pits.
Yeah, I was going to say the best time we actually done before was about 20, so we're going quite well, aren't we?
Yes, well, it's now up to the riders, isn't it? And there's still a lot of people who can win this race.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing at the moment, we tried to use one tyre instead of taking the chance of buggering something up in a pit stop. But it looks as if at the moment the tyres just, I just can't put in the sort of times needed to enable that to work.
And what sort of tyre have you got onto it? Is it a race distance tyre or a bit softer and stickier?
Oh, it's a round one, black, I think, and made of rubber.
Really? Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a bloody clue.
And how have you been enjoying yourself?
Oh, it's actually been really good. I've had a great time whistling around there with all the boys. It brings back some fond memories, that's for sure.
Some have been seeing off, though, the great Graham Crosby, who was second in last year's World Championships. Does this deflate the ego?
No, it wouldn't be hard. I'm an old pensioner. No, I don't mind at all. It's good to see the young guys out there and really going for it. It really is good to see.
You were complaining earlier in the week of the lack of safety at Amaroo Park. Do you still think that now that you're in the race and the adrenaline's pumping?
I tell you what, when you start coming onto this front straight and you've got a tyre that's not as best as it should be, I start thinking about those.
What sort of speeds are you doing at that stage? Do you have a look?
Well, I frightened the hell out of myself just before, actually. I looked at the speedo and we're showing about 175 k's just before breaking into the stop corner.
What are you getting up the hill?
Scared.
And at what speed do you get scared?
No, actually, going up the hill, I think we reached just pretty close to 200 k's, and that's going. And we're showing about 11.5 on the tacho. So, let's hope the thing holds together at a place like that.
And will you be on for a final sprint at the end?
I guess so. I think so. They're going to put Mick out and see if we can get some back some of those laps back. And I guess when they change the tyre and stick me out there, I suppose I've got to pull the pin or pull the finger or whatever you're supposed to do.
Been renowned for pulling the pin, and a man who's virtually modelled himself on him in terms of technique and style on the track, Wayne Gardner. He's an amazing rider and a wonderful character, isn't he?
Yeah, he's unbelievable. I've known him for many years and he's always been the same. He's never changed, and success has never really got to him and made him a big head ring like that. He's always been the same, so if he has to go fast, he will. And like he said, if he has to pull the pin, he'll go for it.
It could be a very interesting finish for this bike number 31. And while we watch it circulating here with 244 laps down, Wayne, can you give us some indication of what the future might hold for you?
Let me see. I've got to go back to England tomorrow. Honda and Britain don't know as yet of my accident through the week, so it's a bit of a disappointment when I tell them what's happened. And unfortunately, I broke my little finger on my left hand, which I've just been getting over 2 broken fingers on my right. So they're not going to be too happy, but I think I've got a race at Brands next weekend, and so I haven't told them as yet what's really going on in my hand, but I think it's going to be okay. Once I get past that, which is the end of all the major championships through the year, I'm off about 2 or 3 weeks later off to Macau, or Hong Kong, Macau, with the Macau Grand Prix, and from there to Malaysia, and then from there back home. So I'm a bit busy yet.
Any chance for Grand Prix bike? I know that you were looking very hopefully towards one.
Yes, it's really when I started racing, I've always wanted to do Grand Prix and base my whole series and my whole racing around Grand Prix. I've had to do like superbikes and Formula 1s and everything to work my way up that way, but it's shaping up pretty well for next year. At the moment, Honda have told me that they can give me the bikes, the van, mechanics, the whole lot, the tyres, and all I've got to come up with is a sponsor really. And Honda are actually looking at a deal where they want a sponsor to put in the money just to run the team really, which is a very cheap deal really. They're looking at actually £50,000, so hopefully, you know, I've got a few people looking for that sort of money, and if that comes off, then I'll be going Grand Prix racing, and you never know, maybe world champion.
Wayne Gardner up in lights. He certainly has the ability. Thanks very much for joining us, Wayne.
Thank you.
We'll go back to the race with 246 laps down, John Smales.
Indeed, Bob, and at the moment it's bike 2 in the lead, the Rod Cox machine, which is 36 seconds in front of the first of the team managed bikes, bike 11, Rob Phillips and Jeff French. Mind you, remember that bike 2 has not yet had its third stop, and both managed bikes have. The managed bikes are circulating nose to tail. There's 1 second in between them as we look now at the Castrol scoreboard. Then 1 lap down is the Roger Hayes Suzuki bike 6, 3 seconds only ahead of Graham Crosby and Michael Cole. Michael Cole at the moment riding bike 31. And there's the leader, 2. And he's got at least another half hour to go yet before his third scheduled pit stop, and that could be just the deciding factor in the Castrol 6 Hour for 1983. And now the race between the two managed bikes, bike 8 and bike 11, side by side as they come down to stop corner. Vince Sharp on 11. But it's 8. Oh, sorry, Vince Sharp on 8. And on 11 is Jeff French. And Frank Maddich and his young son Chris in the pits are going to be watching this dice with great interest, because while a dice is a good thing to keep a rider awake in the boring middle sections of a race, it also puts both machines in terrible jeopardy if someone puts a foot wrong. And I think there won't be too long before the pit boards might come out and tell them just to cool a little bit. And more great sporting action coming up on ABC Sport on Thursday the 3rd and Friday the 4th of November, the Australian PGA Championship 1983, live at 1 p.m. Saturday the 5th and Sunday the 6th of November. Be with ABC Sport, where we bring you the best sport in Australia.
And Robert Holden now in the saddle on bike number 6, the Suzuki Katana. It started in 10th grid position, worked its way forward, is now being pursued by the Rod Cox Malcolm Campbell Honda 750. The race leader, the Suzuki, in 4th place. Out of Honda corner, and again this comparison between the Suzuki, 1/3 bigger again in the engine than the Honda, and a little bit of extra power, about another 15 horsepower. But the Honda with greater ground clearance, just a touch quicker through the corners.
In 6th position, 3 laps down, is the Ron Bolden Gary Coleman machine. Coleman at the helm. He's already been into the pits once and stormed straight out again. The pits were not ready for him, so he had to go around one more time. Now the agonising rear wheel change for the Yamaha 900s, the shaft drive machines. And Bolden's got all the time in the world to find out about track conditions from Gary Coleman, because this wheel change will not be quick, at least not by comparison with the Hondas. To say that the stop is unhurried, lacking in fuss, is an understatement, as they rock the machine backwards and forwards trying to line up the axle shaft. There goes the shaft in now, and look at the man's hand against the exhaust pipe. That's how hot it is. 45 seconds so far gone. Air jacks looking for a way in. Finally, the number plate goes back on, as still they do a bolt on the left-hand side of the vehicle. The longest pit stop of the race to date, or scheduled pit stop, 65 seconds. And he's away in 67 seconds. Ron Bolden, 4 times Australian Grand Prix champion, back in the Castrol 6R. And in the pits, Bob Vincent.
Gary Coleman, just at the moment taking off his gloves and his helmet. Very hot, humid afternoon as Gary undresses after his second stint on the bike. Gary, how are things out there at the moment as far as the circuit's concerned?
I'll just take this helmet off for a sec. The circuit's quite slippery. I don't know. We haven't done a tyre change. As you see, we just did one then. But even since this morning, the track seems to be slippery. And I must admit, I'm doing what's the chap at Bathurst that couldn't do a race comeback or something? I've been in the race for so long. I'm just not race fit, you know. The times aren't that quick, I don't think. You get someone quick passes you and you can sort of hang with them for a couple of laps. But I don't think the times are that quick. It's just that I'm getting a bit old or something, I think.
It's a very humid day, though. That must be telling on all the riders.
I think so. Everyone seems to be this year complaining of muscle cramps more so than anywhere else. I mean, even Stephen Gall, he's built like a sort of...
proverbial brick.
Yeah. He's even a bit sore in the arm. So, if Stephen's sore, everyone else must be sore.
Well, with 260 laps down and a little probably over 100 laps to go, where do the best chances lie, do you think?
Well, we've got to hope for people to have unfortunate things happen to them. We're running, I think, about 6th or 7th at the moment. There's no chance of picking up on the track, so we're just got to hope that... I mean, I don't like to wish it on other competitors. I hope their bikes fail them, put it that way.
Coming up now to the point where Bike 2, the race leader, Rod Cox and Mal Campbell, will have to make their third scheduled pit stop. And they've got to the situation where they're only going to need this stop and no more for the race distance, because they've gone 1.5 hours per stop, where the other Hondas have been forced to stop as early as 1 hour 15. And it's going to make all the difference as this race enters its concluding stages, because there's at least a minute involved in getting into the pits and getting out again, and that's a minute, 1 full lap of the Amaru Park circuit that they can make up. Cox's hand goes up now, indicating this is the lap. They've got to the 1.5 hour mark. 278 laps of the Castrol 6 hour completed. It's Graham Crosby. Mick Cole actually at the helm, passes him on the road to relap himself and get back on the same lap as the leader. 35 seconds is the gap from Cox back to Bike 8, Len Willing and Vince Sharp. Bob Vincent is in the pits.
Rod Cox is off the bike, and on the bike goes Malcolm Campbell. The back tyre is off. Team Honda crew viciously slipping it into the sockets. The rear wheel is on, the tank is full. Malcolm Campbell is out in something like 23 seconds for that pit stop, and he's out for the last hour and a half of the race.
And Mal Campbell looks anxiously behind him to see where the opposition might be. We think they slipped through during the pit stop, and that's what we're looking for at the moment, to give you a gap from first back to third position, Malcolm Campbell, because both team managed bikes are virtually nose to tail on the road. And yes, they are in front. Bike 8 is in the lead. That's Vince Sharp from Bike 11, Jeff French. And they are, in fact, now only 12 seconds in front of Malcolm Campbell in third position.
Rod, you're having some sustenance there, mate. What's that, chewing gum?
Just a bit of ice, mate.
A bit of ice.
Still down the inside.
It's very hot out there, I know, but you must be happy now. You're back within the race lead in sight, and no one else, no more changes on the bike.
No more stops, hopefully. We should handle it now. How long to go?
We've got about an hour and a half to go in the race.
We should make it right through now. With Wally on it, we should win it, I think. Nothing goes wrong.
No problems at all, you don't think, with the bike? It's all handling well?
Good. Just perfect. Brand new. It'll be brand new now. It's got the tyre on it. It'll be good.
What will be the instructions for Malcolm as he goes out in that last leg? Because things are pretty crucial. There can be no mistakes.
Oh, he can handle it. He'll do whatever he has to. Sure. I've got no worries about him.
So you're staring a Castrol 6-hour win in the face?
Sure hope so. Be the first one.
Race leader is the Len Willing Vince Sharp bike number 8 for the Mattich Racing team. Behind it, Phyllis and French from the same team, bike number 11. Then Cox Campbell on bike number 2 in 3rd place. 4th place, the lone Suzuki of Holden and Hayes, well placed, mucking up the the Honda order, with Crosby Cole on the 4th Yamaha in the top 5, number 31, and then Scott and Gall again clawing their way back on their Yamaha to be the leader of the 3 Yamaha 900s, 6th place outright, bike number 7. And after 280 laps, that indicates 372 at race end, 5 laps up on last year's record race distance. Still a very warm, sunny day at Amaroo Park on the 1.95 kilometre circuit. Very hilly, very difficult, as you can see there, making the bike suspension work around the fast back section of the circuit as they come back down the hill. It's quite a climb up the hill, and it's quite a drop down, although it's spread over a greater distance, so it's not steep at any particular point, but heavy braking for Honda corner, and bike 8 fairly unsteady there, as Vince Sharp works it very hard. He's getting it unsettled in most corners at this stage.
Bike 11 in 2nd place, some 4 seconds behind the leader, is Jeff French, soon to hand over to Rob Phillis for the last time, and Phillis is going to have to give every ounce of his skill to get this bike back into the lead, because only 4.5 seconds behind bike 11 is bike 2, Malcolm Campbell, who's already had his last pit stop. In the pits at the moment is Bob Vincent.
Well, a man who's very interested in the performance of Robbie Phillis and his chances of reining in the leaders is John Harvey. John, you've mentioned occasionally that Robbie potentially could be a good car driver.
Well, I think that's true. I think Robbie certainly got the talent. He showed that as a motorcycle racer. He's very cool under pressure, very smooth and very, very consistent. And I think, like Greg Hansford and a couple of other people, Robbie will certainly have the talent to be a good car racer.
Do you think it's a little bit earlier yet in his career?
Well, I think so. I think Robbie really hasn't reached the peak of his motorcycle racing career, and I'd really like to see Robbie go and try motorcycle racing in Europe next year. I think he's got a couple of years left in him at the top, and I'd like to see him do it in Europe.
Well, you'd be a pretty keen judge. You've done everything from Speedway to winning the James Hardy, so that must be a fair vote of confidence in Robbie.
Yeah, well, I've been a very good friend of Robbie and Mick Hone of Mick Hone Motorcycles, who has been his sponsor for some time now, but I think Mick Hone would probably not want to sponsor Robbie next year. He'd like to stop sponsoring and force him to go overseas. And I think that's the plan. I think we might see Robbie off there next year.
He's perhaps a little bit complacent, do you think? He doesn't realise his own potential.
I think that's true, and I think that's why probably Mick Hone would like to force the issue and say, right, Robbie, we're not going to sponsor you this year. Get off overseas and do it.
Are you looking towards a team managed victory here this afternoon?
Well, I think they can still do it. They're down a little bit at the moment, but just today's events just proves how important pit work is. I mean, Rob Phillis, Jeff French bike has lost some time in the pits, and that's unfortunate. They've certainly been doing it on the circuit, and I think there's probably a chance they can still do it, but it's going to be hard work for them.
Well, if there's anyone quick enough and keen enough, it'll be Robbie Phillis.
I would say so, yeah. They're a good combination. They've done a good job today, as the guys on the Hondas, and I'd like to see Frank Mattich get up, but certainly looks like it's going to be a Honda benefit this weekend.
John Harvey, of course, the winner of the James Hardy 1000 only 3 weeks ago, driving with Peter Brock and Larry Perkins in the Holden dealer team Commodore, and a man who takes a great interest in motorcycle racing. In fact, he'll be racing at Mount Panorama next Easter time. in an historic event, riding a Velocette, which he's currently restoring himself. And here comes Vince Sharp, heading for his last pit stop. He at the moment is only 13 seconds ahead of Malcolm Campbell in third position, who's had his final pit stop and therefore can keep going for the next hour 10 that remains in the Castrol 6 hour. Sharp to be off the bike and Len Willing to be on it. Willing, the winner of the Australian 500cc Grand Prix last year. And the bike already at this stage has dropped to third position in the motorcycle race, as both bike 11, Jeff French, and bike 2, Malcolm Campbell, storm through. 15 seconds gone. 19 seconds for the Manage team with a wheel change. Now that is pulling it out of the hat. And now it's entirely up to Len Willing with 70 minutes of racing left to go to see what he can do with his skill and indeed with his daring in the Castrol 6 hour for 1983. There's Rob Phillis now, togging up. He pumping his adrenaline up as well. His wife Carol there behind him. And Rob Phillis, probably the fastest man, with maybe even including Graham Crosby in this event, capable of pulling back tenths of a second a lap on Malcolm Campbell. The two of them very, very good. Campbell more experienced in production bike racing. But don't write the Castrol 6 hour off at this early stage. And here's Crosby now, lying in fifth position, having pulled back some 4 seconds in the last 10 laps on Roger Hayes. That's Michael Cole off the bike, and Graham Crosby onto the machine for the final sprint to the finish.
The incredible thing about that down here, John Smales and Will, is that they've changed the tyre yet again. Graham Crosby has another new tyre on the bike, and we could be in for some fireworks as Crosby gets back out on the circuit. The Manage team preparing now for their second bike to come in. Robbie Phillis on with the leathers. He's waiting for French to come in, and this is mounting up to one hell of a bike race.
Bike 11 now in
2 seconds in arrears to bike number 2, was overtaken actually. The lead changed twice in about 30 seconds because as bike 8 pitted, Vince Sharp handing over to Len Willing, his other team bike, number 11, went into the lead, and then halfway round that lap, it was overtaken by the Rod Cox Malcolm Campbell bike number 2. So this bike now a couple of seconds in arrears. In second place, there's the race leader too. Jeff French, a couple of seconds behind him and about to make a pit stop. And then everybody with new tyres and their gun riders in the saddle out for the final 1.5 hour scrap to the finish. In fact, it's about just over 1 hour. And it should be quite a race within a race. And into the pits it comes. In second place at the moment, about to be re-overtaken. First lead by the Suzuki 1000 of Robert Holden, Roger Hayes. That's in third at the moment, will be second very shortly. Then it will be overtaken by its own team bike, Vince Sharp, Len Willing. And now these quite remarkable pit stops that the bike teams have developed, because they are not easy. It's nowhere near as easy to wheel on a bike as it is on a car. There's chains and there's brakes and brake calipers that have to be moved. Lots of nuts and bolts, spacers on axles. And Bob Vincent's
well,
down
no
there.
problems yet. No problems with the stalling, but yes, problems again with the stalling. That's the third time in the race for this bike. And they could be seeing their chances of victory on bike 11 anyway for the Maddich Racing team, slipping by the boards. The seconds tick by. Still no start, still a problem with the bike. It's ticking over slowly. He's in gear. Robbie Phillips is out of the pits. But what a disappointment for this team. A bike that's been competitive all day, except in the pits. Roger Hayes now quickly into the pits and outs. We're seeing some tremendous pit work down here at the moment. This race has certainly brought the best out of all the teams in the race as far as tyre changes, preparations of the bike, fuel stops and rider changes. We haven't seen anything better in any of the Castrols of the past. It's made it a very exciting race. It's now up to the riders, the bikes and the tyres out on the Amaroo circuit to decide the winner over the last hour of the race.
Well, after 44 heartbreaking seconds, bike 11 out again. He's in second. Well, he was in second place when he came in. He would be back to fourth now. So that Rod Cox, Malcolm Campbell lead on bike 2 from bike 6 that came into the pits. So as we get an update, it's bike 8 second. And that's the Len Willing riding bike 8, replacing Vince Sharp. Bike 6 just been moved on the leaderboard, and bike 11 comes into third place, we're told. Rob Phillips, which means Crosby is back in fifth place on 31. A new wheel fitted after when Crosby took over from Mick Cole. It's come, in fact, it is now fourth. Fifth place, the Suzuki 1000 of Robert Holden, Roger Hayes. And sixth still, and unable to pull up the 3 laps that it's down, is the Yamaha 900 of Richard Scott Stephen Gall. And there's that bike in the pits for its final stop. Richard Scott back into the saddle. The man who did everything right for the bike, bar that one error when he just managed to tangle with another bike and it just took the wheel from under him and skittled him this morning, and that was the start of their tale of woe. But other than that, it qualified superbly. It has run as fast as almost any bike on the track during the day, and is a credit to the team and to the riders, and to that matter for the machinery, because it's very much a touring type bike, and yet it can sprint obviously with the Sportsters.
Well, we've just had a slight pit altercation here. One of the Team Maddich guys ran into their fuel tank as it was being raised off the ground. Nothing serious. With me, more importantly at the moment, Jeff French, who has just finished a stint on the bike that Robbie Phillips is racing on at the moment. Jeff, I think it's fair to say that you would always have been very much in the lead, or very much up with the leaders, if it hadn't been for that minor problem with the bike.
Yeah, it seems that we lost so many valuable seconds because the bike wouldn't restart after refueling, you know. It just seemed to go on forever, so yeah, you're quite right. We probably would have been a lot further in front if we hadn't had the problem.
What was the problem? Is it a blockage or what?
I don't know. I spoke to the mechanic, but he hasn't had a chance to think about it because everybody's been pretty busy, but who knows? Could be the float bowls, I don't know.
We don't see a lot of you down here. You do a lot of your racing up north. Very exciting rider. Any chance of seeing you more on the circuits down here?
Yeah, I just like to do the big ones. So whenever the big ones come up, I usually go to them, providing they're not too far away. I only go about 500 miles. That's about my limit.
And with this much of the race down, we've had about 200 or 308 laps. Probably another 60 maybe 70 laps to go. What's the chances of Robbie reeling it in?
Well, gee whiz, he's rode terrific, although, you know, at the first, if he can ride as well as he did at the first hour, you know, anything can happen. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hope that he brings it home.
There are some people who unkindly suggested that Rob Phillis is not the world's best production bike racer. Well, at the moment he's proving a lot of people wrong, because the Phillis charge has started. He's 1 lap and about 3 seconds down on Malcolm Campbell on the lead Honda VF 750, the official Team Honda entry, and Phillis needs to unlap himself and then get a full lap back to get himself into race contention. He's currently lying in 3rd position, 64 seconds behind the race leader, if you like to look at it that way. And Phillis is using all the track, ripple strips and all, as he now makes this Team Matich Honda work itself as hard as it's worked all day. The flash of bike 2 in front there, the Dayglow green, is Malcolm Campbell. And Rob Phillis is using all the track and a little bit more in his pursuit of Campbell, cracking open the throttle there, you can see. And this is the danger period for the Hondas. There have been a lot of people again who've been saying that the Hondas aren't bulletproof. In fact, 2 have blown up today of the minor machines, probably not as well prepared. As you can see, bike 2 in the lead, Malcolm Campbell, and bike 11, Rob Phillis, with 2 lapped riders to be passed in between. The Ducati 600 passed quickly. Phillis deals with both riders over the top. There's Campbell now. He's a secure 24 seconds in front of bike 8 in 2nd position. Bike 8 at the moment being ridden by Len Willing. And while it seems most unlikely that Rob Phillis could pick up a full lap on a production bike specialist by Malcolm Campbell, Phillis is certainly showing his mettle now as he reels him in by up to 3/4 of a second a lap. To extrapolate 3/4 of a second a lap out over 45 minutes remaining, it's obviously impossible for Rob Phillis to pick up Mal Campbell unless Campbell has a problem. Now the gap really closes as Phillis moves in on Campbell, and Campbell's a man who loves a hard scrap, and he loves racing with nobody better than Rob Phillis. And will he let him through, or will he take the challenge and try and hold him out? Braking duel. Still Campbell. Up to Winfield corner. And as Peter Radford on the Suzuki 1000 looked behind him, he must have died 1,000 deaths as he saw Malcolm Campbell and Rob Phillis in the whites of both their eyes charging down upon him. Now it's Max Thompson on the VF 750 to be dealt with. And again, wonderful riding from the slower back markers, and in this race nobody's going particularly slow. But all of them well aware of the traffic behind them. Gary Wan and Gary Turner. And is it Phyllis? No, it's not.
And here's Crosby sweeping under Phyllis in a tight entry to the right-hander, and far too tight an entry. He's standing up on the pegs, then he gets his weight over onto the inside, but he asks too much of the back wheel. Phyllis tightening to go under Crosby as Crosby sweeps out and down, and he knows he's gone, and he tries to correct, and he is not in the event. And he has a very gentle run, actually, sitting up, just getting a bit hot in the right buttock. The bike overtakes him and takes all the forces of stopping on the front wheel and the front fork. And even before the bike had hit the fence, Crosby was up chasing it. And that brings up into fourth place bike number 6, the Suzuki 1000 of Robert Holden, Roger Hayes. Fifth then will be number 18, Bernie Summers, Robert Scollier, as Crosby heads to the pits. No doubt a bit ashamed.
And a true professional, he stays off the track to do it, staying out of the way of the traffic.
With a bit of luck they can be a finisher, but right out of the contest. And this is the man that's kept things very well in shape today, Malcolm Campbell. He was one of 3 qualifiers last year who did 55.8. He wasn't the first to do it, so he didn't start from pole. The previous year he had an identical time with another rider, but it was the first to do it and was on pole. But for 3 years now, Malcolm Campbell has had the fastest qualifying time for the Castrol 6 Hour. And only a few days ago, when Dennis Neal, who manages Graham Crosby's team, suggested that Crosby run the same tyre as Campbell was running, which was a quicker tyre. He was doing better times on it, but Crosby said the bike slid too much. Crosby said, well, I don't want to spend my life 6 hours of the bike sliding around the way Malcolm Campbell does. Well, it's Crosby that's come unstuck and Campbell that hasn't.
Applause from the pits now as Crosby comes in. Brave effort from the International, good one.
And the forks are bent. The front wheel is not vertical with the rear wheel. And it's in a sad state. Very bad luck.
Well, there's not much you can say, really. It was building up as the dice of the final stages of the race with Robbie Phyllis, and unfortunately Crosby was the loser of the dice. But the bike is very bent. They're having a look at it at the moment. Some decision will be made. Mike Cole is dressed and ready to go. Graham Crosby has his usual smile on his face. No doubt that's a smile of happiness and relief that he's not too hurt, but I'm sure that he's very disappointed to have lost it at this late stage in the race. Dennis Neal is having a word with him at the moment. They're tossing up the idea of whether or not to go on with the race. Mick Cole has in fact taken off his helmet. I'll just get a quick word with Dennis if I can get it. Any decision, Dennis, on what's going to happen? You finished for the race?
Well, having a look at the thing coming up along pit alley there, it's really crabbing badly, so I think it's hardly a matter of putting a set of levers or something on it. It's pretty well retired, I'd say. Graham said he's having a good dice with Robbie, and he just tilted a little bit hard going into the loop and lost the front end.
Obviously a great disappointment for you.
Well, it shows you just how close to the limit these two guys are riding around. They were, Lenny Willing was the next in place, and I did a split, and in 4 laps they made something like 8 seconds on him. So they're catching almost 2 seconds a lap. Would have been really interesting if it sort of gone another 20 minutes.
I'll see if I can get Graham over here. Graham, can you come and have a word with us?
Graham?
Graham's coming around at the moment. Well, Cros, you were going like a train, mate, but something went wrong.
Well, you know, with electronics and Apple computers and all that, they go pretty good, but you can't rely on the human element. Unfortunately, it's a bit... I think I might have been just going... I was going hard. I sort of caught Robbie, and looking at my lap times, I was about a quarter of a second slower behind him. So I thought if I could pass him, then I might be able to just put that... bit of a gap, but... Two things. First of all, you've got to catch him. Secondly, you've got to pass him. And thirdly, you've got to stay in front of him. I got two of them right, but I couldn't get the last one.
He's a great rider, isn't he?
Yeah, he was riding superbly. There's no problems at all. It's just the lap time sort of really got down to a point where I had to try something to get past him. And I sort of, I run around the outside of him over the top of the loop. There's a couple of slower riders in front. Now, I figured that if I could get to those slower riders and through them before Robbie could, well, that'd be great. I can put them between us and I'd be able to carry on. But I went over the top, went around the outside I tried to get around the outside of him, so then when we started to come back into the loop, well, I was already there. I was there. I just carried on straight on me bum.
Looking at the race in retrospect, do you feel that perhaps the attempt to go out on one tyre was the wrong move from the start?
In hindsight, possibly, but you can never tell. You know, I feel fairly confident that we could have done high 56s on the tyre that we've got at the moment, and possibly only gone through with three changes, which is good, you know. But you've really the element of trying to get out there and stay out there and avoiding pit stops and wheel changes, because it really tries to be trying to avoid that. You know, somebody drops a spacer and there's a bit of time consumed on that, you know, so the less wheel changes, the better.
Well, what's it take to win a 6-hour? You've had a few goes at them, you've come back after a little bit of time overseas. What do you think of the race?
I think the race is something that you can't take lightly. You have to have a really good backup, which we've got with Apple Computer Shop. That's great, you know, no problems at all. They're really, really terrific. The only problem is, you know, the riders have got to put it in their brain that they've got a lap time to go to and go for it, not try and overdo it.
So the secret is consistency and a very formulated plan beforehand that you're going to stick to?
Yeah, that's not changing after midstream.
But what do you do in a situation where the tyre battle's raging, the bike battle's raging, and the riders are expected to stay super cool?
Mate, life wasn't meant to be easy.
I think somebody else said that, didn't they?
I don't know.
Well, there's the super cool Malcolm Campbell now in the lead, 35 seconds in front of Bike 8 Len Willing. But the story of the race at the moment is the incredible pursuit of Rob Phillis in third position, now only 11 seconds behind his teammate Len Willing, and closing by up to a second a lap. Meantime, Malcolm Campbell, with the pressure right off him, has 22 minutes remaining and 33 seconds in hand.
Leading that trio on 18 is the Robert Scolyer-Bernie Summers pairing that's presently in 6th place. 3 laps down. And yes, a long way in arrears, the one that Richard Scott came to grief on when he was trying to pass him for 6th place a long time ago. Sandwiched in between him and the race leader is 26 Robert Astley Dave Moore. Bike 27, which is a long way back. '15th place, in fact.
When Campbell picks up Summers, he will have put 4 laps on the machine. Hard brakes. Summers riding his own race to his own pace, which is a fair bit slower, obviously, than Malcolm Campbell, and Campbell was unsettled there in Honda Corner. Now Astley comes back under his braking, and Campbell will be feeling most uncomfortable in that sandwich and very keen to get clear of it.
Team Honda Australia have really done it well in this event. qualifying fastest to running at the front and looking well situated through most of the race, although there have been many leaders and many changes of lead. Interesting to look back at the previous 6 hours, this being the 14th. Kawasaki have won 5 of them outright. Honda have won 3, certain to make it a 4th, because we've got Hondas in the first, all the major positions at this stage. Kawasaki, in addition, have taken 3 class placings, Honda only 1. Yamaha's had 1 out.
Set for a start for the 1980.